So
I agree.
last time I led the talk, we talked about introduction in chapter 1. This week is chapters 2 through 4. I tacked on an extra chapter because after doubly reviewing the book and everything, I felt like the chapters were short enough and easy enough that it made sense. I wanted to approach the talk maybe a little different today. So we'll see how that goes and whether or not we like it. After really reviewing the chapters, I thought that chapter 2 because of the way Pema writes, right? She uses a lot of anecdotes, and it feels like she's going over information that we kind of know a lot. I am very fond of a lot of the quotes and the style of her writing, though. Please feel free to interrupt me if you need to, anyone. And so in chapter 2, I would say that if we were going to focus in on a topic of conversation for a moment, she really stops and emphasizes the first noble truth with her stories, and that same theme that we see in multiple of her books of approaching the things that we fear as teachers, and then once again as the things that we hope not being things to cling to. I like where she defines this for us here on this page, where she says, thinking that we can find some lasting pleasure and avoid pain is what in Buddhism is called samsara, a hopeless cycle that goes round and round endlessly and causes us to suffer greatly. We all know that. But I think that once in a while, for me personally, it's always good to have kind of a rudimentary review, right, of what are the noble truths? What does it mean to really think about those? Any thoughts so far? Am I going like a little too fast in my thought process
You're
here?
you are not going too fast, and I think it's right to go over fundamentals because that's what it's all based on.
Yeah. I think that at the level of books that I personally keep picking, and then maybe that book club keeps voting on, they're all very beginner friendly, most of them. Which, you know, we're supposed to have beginner's mind. Obviously, it's nice to feel like, aha, a challenge every so often. But even the most simple things can be a challenge to us if we go in with the right mindset. But sometimes I think, as much as I love Pema's writing, I can see where it can be redundant, perhaps, to read.
Yeah. Well, it is Buddhism after all.
Yeah. And so what I would say that ultimately for anyone who either didn't read the book or doesn't want to talk in depth about any of these pages is the first noble truth. So there you go. That's my chapter 2. Any thoughts that anybody would like to maybe go more in depth in on chapter 2, or if we are ready, we can go on to chapter 3.
That was the shortest chapter I think we've ever done.
Sorry. Well, so I was thinking about how I've been doing my book club chapters, and I wanted to think about what is actually the most valuable chunks coming out and how to facilitate conversation a little more effectively.
Don't mind all the ice noises.
I am a little bit slow right now because I literally just woke up right before this.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the idea. I think if I obviously I didn't read it this week, so if you're like, "Yep, this is the basic concept," I think it is always important to remind ourselves that, like you said, sometimes the most basic things can be challenging. But I think it's even if you don't have the right mindset, it's still going to challenge you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no matter how many times we do these things and how much we practice and how thoughtful and skillful we become, there's still going to be a certain degree of like when we encounter certain things and feelings arise in us, sometimes it's still going to be challenging.
Yeah.
I think forever. I think everybody, even sometimes like watching something with a monk and hearing them talk about, we watch some videos or listen to The Way Out is in with Brother Fapu, and things, he'll talk about things that are just day-to-day challenges as well, and obviously you know, being the abbot in Plum Village, he's like very mindful and conscientious of how he's interacting with the people around him and trying to set a good example and all of this, but the inner process is still a challenge, right? And
Right.
how to manage that. And like he literally dedicates like every moment of his life to this. So, and there's some older monks as well that they'll talk about something and say, this is this is just a human condition, it seems. Everybody will go through in various ways, and yeah, you can train yourself, but no matter how far along we get, no matter how much, not to mention the bit where we're, lay people, not ordained monks who dedicate every minute of every day to this, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the fine line between being redundant or not really adding any insight and having a reminder, bringing you back in a way that feels still relevant and workable because the actual message is still relevant and workable. It's just a matter of, okay, you're wasting my time or you're adding some kind of value to it, right? Every time we
Mm-hmm.
read something like this where it's going to I think this is just going to be in every single one because that's the heart of it, like you
Mm-hmm.
said. But are we adding value in reading it?
Yeah. I think that's a really good way of putting it is where yeah, how do we make sure this is an experience that's adding value? I like this train of thought my brain's on right now.
That's all I have to add for chapter 2.
Okay. Ben, any thoughts?
No, not on this one.
No. All right. Um, chapter 3 similarly also hits on this idea of bad situations as teachers, right? In chapter 2, it's more about life itself as the teacher, and that when you are going through that process of awakening, of every moment that arises is its opportunity to be a teacher, right? And here she really dives a bit more into um, what meditation is, how the steps look, and more about that fear and that hope and that stepping into unknown territory is really what's going to teach you more. I would like to think that the people who have been regularly joining these chats, all of you and myself, hopefully, have this really strong sense of like, okay, yes, don't fear fear, like go into the thing, right? Like at this point, because I've read so many of her books, I don't actually know if younger beginners than myself are struggling with the idea of approaching difficult feelings or not, because I'm realizing I'm getting to a weird oversaturated state with the concept. Um
What concept do you mean? Also, the concept of being reminded to face your fears, or
yeah, being reminded to face your fears, right? So I'm constantly thinking about, all right, what in my mind am I avoiding? What is actually happening? And trying to stop and look at the hard feelings inside myself. Especially been struggling with some particular PTSD, and so that keeps coming up. And so while I'm trying to use my practice to approach it, it is difficult. And
yeah,
at that same time, I don't know if everybody else is feeling this, right? How much is that a desk experience? How much is that a universal experience? I don't know. I'm trying to be open to that reality. Maybe that's a bit of a tangent. My apologies.
no, it's
Um,
definitely something I have been working on as well, and I mean this chapter kind of made me really uncomfortable because basically it says, yeah, be there with your fears and go into them. And
mm-hmm.
I have some baseline of anxiety like 99% of the time. So yeah, it's as you said, it's a struggle, and it's
Yeah.
really, I mean, it's always rewarding when I manage to face my fears and do something that I have been putting off. But Oh, it's always a fight, against my demons, so to speak.
Absolutely, and I'm right there with you, Ben, about the baseline of anxiety just following me around all the time.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in the same boat. But I guess I have a question with I'm not sure this again. I feel like my brain is still really slow, so make sure I understand. You're saying that although you feel that the advice of sitting with your fears and trying to understand yourself through them is good, it is overwhelming to feel like you have to do it all the time. Is that, or did I miss something?
That's not what I was saying, but now that you've said it out loud, yes. um I think maybe Ben was saying something along those lines of, now that I've thought about it a second, yes, I do find it overwhelming to try to do it all of the time. I think it's really tempting to want to go into that state of I call it no think, but that's not. Yeah, I'm going to call it no think because I have no other terminology for it. It's just, you're not using any kind of mindfulness. It's autopilot. There we go. That was the word I wanted. Autopilot. Right? And it's real tempting because it's not hard. It's not difficult to do. It's not.
Yeah, it's especially for me. It's also my default pattern, or has been for most of my life, to run away from my problems and distract myself in any number of ways. So yeah, I definitely get it when you say it's easy to not look at the things that need looking at, to that need looking. Yeah, whatever. I think you know what I mean.
An interesting thread of thought though that I did go on, and I'm pleased with how this conversation has led to this. I think it's easy to get fixated on my neurosis and all the different things going on in my head, and then how I try to use my practice to focus on it because all the teachings make sense because I'm using my neurosis as a springboard. And she hits it right here of that, that's the teachings make sense when that's where my center of context is. However, really stopping to push myself about what is egolessness and get back into these thoughts, I guess, has been interesting while I went through this chapter and stopped here. And that's why I highlighted this big chunky paragraph, right? I realize for the last while, I don't know how long, that's what I've been doing is I've really clung to filtering teachings through the things that are going on in my brain, like the anxiety and the PTSD and all these things, right? And so everything is filtered through that. And sure, it makes sense. And I think I've definitely gotten something from the teachings. However, I think that it's also blinded me to certain other aspects of the teachings, if that makes sense.
Can you repeat that last sentence one more time?
I believe it has blinded me to certain aspects of the teachings. I'm not focusing in on things like egolessness and duality because I'm filtering everything through the parts of the practice that relate to my neurosis.
Using the forest for the trees, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's weird to realize that I've been doing that because I feel like, because it was funny because in the midst of it, you think you're doing good work. And it's not that I don't think I was doing bad work, right? Like I have benefited from some of this work, but it was more limited than I realized it was at the time. You know what I mean? And it's always interesting to peel back another layer of the onion, so to speak, and be like, another way I was blinded again. So that's my share for the week, I guess, is a layer.
Das is like onions.
I do like onions. I know that's not what you mean. Sorry.
Sorry, Ben. were you gonna say something?
It wasn't really important. Go on.
Was it an onion joke?
Uh, maybe.
I have a question, kind of
Yeah.
elaborating on that. Please forgive me if I'm like having you repeat stuff you've already said because I might have missed. I feel like the world is going slightly too fast for me right now.
Okay, no problem.
I slept only like 4 hours or something, and it was not good. But uh, so when you're talking about like sitting with the quote negative feelings
Mm-hmm.
and like trying to understand the neuroses and that it's productive, but then you're losing sight of sort of like the how it fits into the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I guess on top of the like obviously having anxiety like all the time is there's not a point where you truly get to be at peace if you
Yeah.
have that. But I think like for me and I at one point it was so bad that I had straight up paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like it was from PTSD, which thankfully I have gotten past that and that bit of it, and I'm very glad. But I found like for myself being in a place, being physically, like, because you have physiological responses to the anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like elevated heart rate, and as if I it's again most basic thing like returning to the present moment and breathing and just because anxiety is so much a presence in a future moment to come back to this moment and what's actually happening around me and outside of me too, right? What's happening not just in my body but also just these simple like day-to-day things, whether that's something outside, you know, the birds and the leaves and the wind and all of that, or even something inside, something so simple, how something looks, how the sun, how the rays of the sun, or how the rain falls, or how the water sounds when it's boiling, or, you know, what the pets are doing, whatever. Very base, basic observations.
Mm-hmm.
And then at a time when that feeling isn't so pronounced, and you can be in the moment, then to allow myself to go backwards instead and kind of understand like why am I having this response to a present or future situation, where where does that feel familiar from before, or where could that have come from, and like very it's it's such a process, very slowly understanding. Sometimes I'll see something and be like, I don't know what this could possibly be about, like especially reading things about like psychology and the whole like inner child, or how uh I don't know, things that you went through when you were younger will shape you today, and I'm like, what in the heck could I have, I don't think I went through anything that would have caused this thing, which sometimes it's something from adulthood, right? But going
Mm-hmm.
through and yeah, like, I don't know, I don't think that this is right, but then eventually after many times I can go, I'm noticing something, I'm noticing a pattern, I'm realizing something I didn't before, and then connecting it back to again how we're all like, sorry, this is all over the place,
No, I get you.
to ego. So it's there's a sort of difference between understanding how I am and how the things around me made this version of me that responds in certain ways, and like that everything kind of just follows. It's the pieces come together, but then it's still that they're all just pieces, and like if you can see yourself as made up of all these pieces already, and we know like can we know intellectually too that being made of the same stuff as everything, and but for me a really big part of actually feeling that has been finding and connecting with the things that made me how I am. And when you see yourself as this sort of series of events and of other people. Like I'll see my dad or my mom or people I've known from long ago in myself now, and how these different experiences manifest and became a part of my personality and my experience of my current life in adulthood. And somehow that connection of just all these little bits of all these other people or places or things that have happened, and seeing even not even just physically that like the atoms that make up myself have been other things and will be other things, but also in a sort of more social way, that all of the parts that make me who I am came also from somebody else and something else. And there is no self in that way either. There's no like independent. I'm unique because all these parts have combined in this exact way, but they're all from someone else, and they got those from somewhere else, and that kind of, I guess, a slightly more abstract version of thinking about this than what we had talked about in when we were reading Thich Nhat Hanh's writing. But I started to think about what is it, Miguel de Unamuno? I am one, I am no one, I am 100,000. I don't know, conceptualizing it in this way, I feel kind of, I wasn't intending for that to happen that way, but I feel like it comes full circle, and now I feel it a lot more, and it's so much easier to connect that sort of intellectual part with an actual experience of non-self, I guess. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think I got way off track and explained this very weirdly. But
No, it was interesting.
You did no such thing.
I feel not very put together and concise this morning. So
It was good. It was definitely related.
yay, I did it.
You did do it.
It was both an interesting insight into you, but also gave me some thoughts to reflect on later, for sure.
Pay no mind to the anxious self-monitoring.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is correct.
And that was pretty much chapter 2. I mean, chapter 3, sorry. So chapter 4.
Yeah, do it.
Oh, I'm
Do
sorry,
it.
Max, did you have something?
Nope.
I wrote some notes for myself on a piece of paper, and my 4 notes from this chapter were: how to relax, fluid language, 6 points of meditation. So those were my 4 notes regarding this
Good.
chapter that I thought were like the most notable things that happen. Pema once again shares an interesting little anecdote, so that's fun if you want to know more about Pema's life and her interactions with Trungpa Rinpoche. So those are all really neat. But the discussion she has about how to encourage relaxing, and how even without realizing it, you may think you're adaptable, but sometimes challenges are going to come up and make you realize, oh dang, I'm actually really tense about this. What I really found was she was talking about Rinpoche's utilization of a more fluid language. And so what I thought that was worth noting was because I frequently am inspired, reminded of, or I know I bring up quite a bit, our internal narrative and the way we talk to ourselves about situations, whether that affects our practice or our anxiety. And so I liked this idea of trying to learn to use more fluid language when it came to the practice and meditation. So instead of saying things like concentrating, you say touch the out breath and let it go. So I thought that was a really solid point that happens in chapter 4. And then I highlighted this chonky bit. And it's kind of the same thoughts of what are you doing during meditation? What is happening during these processes? And then she literally makes us a list, because what she does is she touches in on what does a meditation sitting practice looks like. While it's really tempting, like I'm a little uncomfortable, I'm gonna do a big change. But instead, doing small minute changes and going through this 6 points can help make a more fruitful sitting, I guess. And so the 6 points being, where are you seated? How are your legs positioned? What's your torso doing? What are your hands doing? Your eyes and your mouth. So there's the 6 points. And she hits on that a little more specifically with the list. And I thought going through that was actually really valuable for me as I thought about my own practice, because I absolutely struggle with this. I get really fidgety. I get itchy. My whole body starts to vibrate with things that need to be addressed as soon as I'm trying to do a sitting meditation. Like it's like 1,000 things are happening suddenly to my entire body. So I liked this list, this idea of going through these 6 points to help work through the distraction and get back into the body in a way that isn't just, I can feel every cell on my skin vibrating, and more, practical sense of meditation of like, I'm in the moment of my skin and not every cell of my skin.
I am aware of the skin.
But not too aware.
I'm not freaking out about skin, though.
I'm not freaking out about it, because that's a problem I have. That's a very good point, Max, because I also struggle with OCD tendencies, and so if I start concentrating on my skin too much, I feel the need to do things like I should get some bleach and fix this. It's dirty.
Oh no. Oh.
But that's
man.
That's a more extreme thing I've been working on. I haven't bleached my skin in years.
That's good. That's good. Let's hope that continues.
That's more than y'all ever needed to know about Des. You're welcome.
Not you, Des. I still value you. You're very important.
I also have OCD, and it manifests in some not skin bleaching.
So the skin bleach, it's not about sanitation, I will tell you.
No.
My neurosis is rooted more in the idea of being invaded by a fungus.
Oh no.
No,
So-
that's a very specific concern.
So then, The Last of Us was a hard watch for you?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh.
So there you go. There you go. Just so we're not confused, and I'm not like, oh, it's too many germs. No, I'm not worried about germs. Weirdly enough, I'm a cleanly
fungus.
person, but I'm not overly worried about the germs. No, I'm gonna be invaded by a skin fungus. Ugh.
That's the real concern.
That's the real worry.
This is kind of interesting. Is it always okay? Well, normally there's more than one thing, right? Is that just that one particular thing is related to the sphere of fungus, or everything? Because I'm assuming you have other compulsions.
Oh
then
yeah,
also
yeah.
that
That's just my more dangerous compulsion.
uh,
That's my dangerous compulsion. I have minor other compulsions that honestly I will indulge a little more because they're very unobtrusive, I guess.
mhm. It's not causing harm directly.
I do try to be aware of not letting them dictate things, but
Mhm.
If I find it soothing to go line up everything in the kitchen a little bit more, then
Mhm.
I'm gonna maybe do that to get through my day.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is a weird one, but for me, OCD it's very physical. Like it's very rooted in the experience of my body, and I don't know why, but yeah, sometimes certain things will start to bother me a lot, and I'll notice my body too much, and it becomes obsessive, and it's sometimes to the point where it's incredibly difficult to pay attention to anything else. I'm just thinking about this thing about my body, but it's it's a physical sensation of something, right? So it could be my nails are too long, or my cuticles are bothering me, or the other day, and this is when I knew it was really bad. I was having a really, really rough day. I don't know, mentally or physically or something. My health must have been off. But last week, I had a day where I had the compulsion. My legs were bothering me. My skin was feeling kind of irritated or something, and I had the compulsion to pluck all of my hairs out individually.
Oh no.
Which is, like a thing that people pay to get done. Like waxing is a thing, right? But I felt like taking them all out individually, and somehow that, like, I mean, my skin was kind of irritated, so I think it actually did help. Like, some of them I probably needed to do that. Like, something was, I don't know, maybe they were rubbing on something and got kind of
Yeah.
irritated the follicles or whatever.
No, I empathize with all these
But
things. I'm like,
I-
yes, I felt that. Oh yeah.
I'm like talking to my friends on Discord going, I feel like pulling all my hairs out. They're like, that seems weird. And they were not understanding, thinking like, oh, this is aesthetics or something. Like, why do women
no.
care if their
I
legs
can
are
feel too
hairy? Blah
much.
blah blah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I want to remove the hairs because the hairs are bothering me. And then I did, and then I did. I was like, it's okay. This is a fine thing. It'll probably actually help my skin. I'm not doing anything else anyway because I'm obsessing over my legs right now. So I actually sat there and I pulled out like 400 hairs, which is not good, but also not bad. Like, it didn't hurt anybody, and I was like, I haven't really, like, aside from hand washing a bit excessively, I haven't really given into most of these feelings. I kind of try to say no, we're fine. Just try to find. It's because you're not doing enough things. Like, don't let your hands be free, right? Go get busy with something. Go do the dishes, whatever, and that helps. But this one, I
Go
was
be
like,
productive. At least try something else.
Yeah, because often that's the thing, right? I
Yeah.
feel like I need to be doing something, and then it's obsessing over the whatever physical sensation, and now the something becomes that. But if I'm doing something else productive, like the dishes or vacuuming or something that my hands are too busy to do anything else, then it's fine. But I can't sit and watch a movie or something because then my body's not doing anything, and
Right.
my head can do something, but my body's starting to do these things, and
It's
now
like you're speaking to my soul, Lee.
yeah. I was gonna say,
yes.
I think we have a lot of the same problems, Des. We have a very similar brain, but yeah, then I'm like, you know what? It's okay. Sometime I don't need to feel bad about this. It's a little weird, but also my skin will feel better. And then afterward, I did a sugar scrub and put tea tree on it, and it felt less irritated. And I was like, this is okay. And bonus points. Yeah, I don't have to have as many hairs on my leg in case I want to like wax or shave later. But maybe sometimes I guess to tie this back to that, what's happening here, sometimes having these like very specific meditation instructions for me is not. Well, besides, I think you should be able to meditate just like in any position, anywhere. It doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know that
It
it should
shouldn't
be.
matter.
It shouldn't be positionally important, right? But I do think it like is interesting for those who want to be pursuing that sitting meditation, and
Yes,
As-
and it's good sometimes. Or for
absolutely.
learning. I just always learned that it's not really about. I guess some people think more ritualistic too. Okay, I'm going to go into this position and do this activity, and then it makes it easier to with your mind associating your body in this activity with doing this mental activity and exploring and sitting with these feelings, and maybe it makes it easier
Yeah.
to actually get started with it and do something that's very difficult. But it's there's a bit too much of presence if it becomes obsessive too. So my challenge is, okay, how do I just let my body be in a way that feels okay at that time, and it doesn't always mean doing something that looks like this.
Exactly. So that was chapter 4.
What a weird
chapter 4.
Yeah.
chapter 4, yeah.
I thought we were on chapter 3.
No, we just finished
No,
chapter
we
4.
finished. Remember? And that was chapter 3, and you're like, yeah.
I thought that was chapter 2.
Nope.
Chapter 2 was
Oh,
the
no.
shortest chapter ever, and we
Oh, that's
finished it
right.
at like
That-
11:07.
that's
And
like
that's
2
why
minutes,
we
you're right.
added chapter 4 for this week, because otherwise, nowhere near enough to talk about. Not with the
I
way I
see.
wanted to try proceeding with the discussion today instead of the other format. So,
Well, we got into some Stranger Things.
I love it. Go team.
We did a.
Any further thoughts on this particular chunk of reading or the things we discussed today?
I love her writing.
I do.
She is quite fearless in her willingness to be like, listen, sometimes life feels like it's setting you on fire. That's okay.
Use that as a learning opportunity.
Right.
Yeah,
when-
very, very easier
like-
said than done.
Like she said when she went to that Gumpo Abbey or whatever it's called, the first few years felt to her like she was boiled alive. Okay,
Mhm.
that's a mental image to have.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that in chapter 4. You do get this sense of, all right, things suck. Things have sucked for me. Don't think they're all perfect, because they're not. So that was nice. I will say that as much as I breezed over chapter 4, this isn't to discount like the realities of, as we've mentioned, an amount of trauma or other neurotic things can make it difficult to practice or say, hey, look at this cool life experience I just had. I loved the trauma. Now I'm gonna be so enlightened. Like, that's not easy, but sometimes once there's space between you and that trauma, you can learn some cool stuff from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are my thoughts.
It's good
Yeah,
thoughts, Des.
Thanks.
Good
So-
thoughts.
Yeah.